I wanted to start a video series talking about the Webley Mk IV in 38-200. It's an interesting gun with an interesting history and very interesting ammo. There's a couple of videos and articles out there talking about this specific gun and its development, but the gist of it is the British Empire used Webley pattern revolvers for their military applications for a very long time. Those were almost exclusively chambered in 455 Webley, which is, from what I've read, a relatively hefty round. It's somewhat analogous to 45 ACP. 45 ACP is a little bit hotter, it's not rimmed, but again, roughly analogous. Now, after World War I, especially with the advent of tanks and other brand new combat roles in which people aren't going to have long arms on them, the British government decided that they wanted a gun that would be easier to practice with, since they were going to be issuing it to a ton of people, not necessarily just officers and rear echelon troops. So what they ended up coming up with was taking a relatively popular round in the Anglosphere, 38 Smith & Wesson short, which at the time was being used by the New York Police Department in, I believe it was the revolver that preceded the Colt Police Positive or the Colt New Police, or maybe the Smith & Wesson Model 10. Anyway, this round was being used on the other side of the pond in America and elsewhere in the Anglosphere. And so the Brits thought, yeah, I mean, that would be fine. This is still, compared to many of the autoloader rounds of the day, at least adequately powerful, or delivering roughly the same power, especially compared to like 32 auto, 380 auto, those types of rounds. So they took this round, which is a 45 grain 38 Smith & Wesson short, and then they added 55 grains to it. And so now you have this 200 grain, just big old fat school bus of a round that is supposed to, according to War Department reports, have similar performance to 455. Whether or not that's the case is to be found out. I would like to do some Paul Harrell type tests with a meat target, chronograph, all that stuff, but we'll see if that ends up materializing. But for the time being, talking about just the ammo itself, I think it's interesting. It's interesting to hear people's reports on this gun, because I've heard more than one people say offhanded, yeah, they're really neat, but you can't hit anything with them. And I had to ask them, well, what ammo were you shooting through it? And they said, oh, just the stuff on the shelf. Well, this is relatively boutique stuff. I had to wait, I think, 9 or 10 months post-pandemic to buy that, just because they were out of stock. You can get the same stuff from Steinel, and I've never seen their stuff be in stock. This was also not very cheap. So I would imagine that when they say they got something off the shelf, they were probably referring to this Fiocchi. This is the only stuff that I found that's readily available at a somewhat reasonable price. I think this is 60 or 70 cents a round. So the interesting thing is, this gun was made for this ammo. This gun was sighted for this ammo. And while these aren't removable or adjustable sights, one can imagine that these sights were probably made in the factory for 38-200. That's probably what they're sighted for, not 145 grain. So, of course, your point of impact is going to be different if you're using ammunition that the gun isn't sighted for. Now, I have found that this gun shoots good groups with this. As far as practical accuracy goes, well, I shoot practically, so if I can hit a man-sized target at handgun distances, so out to maybe 30 yards, I'm happy with it. This I've yet to shoot, because it's so expensive and hard to get. And so I would like to do some videos down the line, if there's interest anyway, setting up a chronograph, doing a meat target, all the normal Paul Harrell stuff. So if you're interested in that, please let me know. But as it stands now, it's just interesting to me that it was, for a long time, up until the 70s, standard issue to have a round that was made and optimized, And then to kind of take it the other way and to just shove this really heavy bullet in there that's just lead, unjacketed. It's just kind of an interesting take on things, but I think it is very uniquely British as well. So I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope you learned something, and I'm planning on making many more videos on the Webley because this is my favorite handgun that I own.